Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the 2019 Budget Committee. I'm going to bring us to order. I have no regrets this morning. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? I see none. Any member of the public wishing to speak further regarding an issue on the 2019 Budget Committee agenda for today may appear before Council at its meeting on January 28, 2019 at 7 p.m. when the recommendations from this meeting will go forward for final consideration. If you wish to speak as a delegation, please sign the sheet located at the back of the room or notify the Clerk's Department no later than noon the day of the Council meeting. Any PowerPoint presentations must also be forwarded to the Clerk's Department no later than noon the day of the meeting. We have no consent or confidential consent items. Our discussion item today is the 2019 operating and capital budget deliberations. Members of the committee, I put before you a recommendation for us to begin with. But before we get to that, Mr. Green, do you want to provide any additional information regarding the recommendations?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of the committee. I appreciate being given the opportunity to make a few comments regarding the resolution that you're looking at on the screen. And in doing so, I'd like to actually give you a little history about financial policies at the town of Oakville. And because it'll help lead the things that we've done over the various years and how we actually got to this one to be put before you today. When I joined the town back in the 70s, I think our main financial policy of the time, and Harry Barrett was the mayor, and Ken Needham, who still lives in Oakville, was the town manager, was a pay-as-you-go philosophy. We did not believe in debt, and if you had to get into debt, it had to be for very extraordinary. I mean, debt was a very bad word. But you know, in those days, it was a lot easier to avoid debt, because back in those days, at a provincial level, we had transfer payments. We had transfer payments that helped us maintain our roads at 50% on the main roads and 90% provincial funding on connecting links. We had subsidies to assist us with the capital construction of new roads and new bridges. We had subsidies on storm sewers. There were other things that were left to the local municipality, our parks maintenance and our administration buildings, but we had a great deal of transfer payments. So that pay-as-you-go philosophy that we had back in that day was one that was easy to work with. In the 80s and 90s, we entered periods of change. No ifs, ands, or buts. In fact, one day we all woke up and the province announced, guess what, folks, there are no more transfer payments for roads, for bridges, or storm sewers, and we're no longer in that business. And all of a sudden, a lot of burden was put on municipalities, not just Oakville, but obviously within the province. One of the things at that time, and I think back to Harry Henderson, who was our treasurer back in the 70s and early 80s, but became the CAO for the town of Oakville, and Harry is part of that financial strategy that dealing with the lack of transfer payments and again some of the uncertainty thought, you know, we need a mill rate stabilization fund because if certain things happen, we need to know that we're building reserves for those days that it might just tend to rain or pour. So we started, now we have the policy again, no debt, mill rate stabilization. As we continued through until the late 90s, all of a sudden the province again said, well, you know, we're having some fiscal issues here and we're now going to, you know, change and download more things. Particularly the region got things, but we as well. Some again, the limited transfer payments that we enjoyed disappeared at the time. Things changed. Of course now we have aging infrastructure. And, you know, we hadn't had the enjoyment of the capital assistance from on a continuous basis from the province. Of course, we had the odd provincial initiative or a federal initiative on a very limited basis that helped us out. But we recognized that, boy, our roads, because a number of them had been built with new growth that started back in 1982, and by the end of 1996, 1998, we recognized that we need to do additional work. So we created the 1% capital levy. That capital levy has been in place, as I say, since 1996. It's 1%. We were one of the only, in fact, in those days, we were the only municipality that I'm aware of that went out and actually did it. You have municipalities now that are trying to put in place 2% and 3% capital levies. We're now enjoying one that allows us to maintain a very high standard for maintaining our facilities. We still have, from time to time, we still have those provincial programs and the federal programs that come along, and we do receive, gas tax subsidy for transit and some of the other areas. But really, it's been our financial policies over the years, which I believe have served us well. In fact, if you go back to staying the course with those policies, the Monk School of Business several years ago rated Oakville as the fiscally healthiest municipality in the province. And that was because, as I go back to, from my point of view, that little Mayor Harry Barrett and Ken Needham would stay the course, dead is bad, pay as you go. And over the years, we have incrementally increased those policies, which have served us, as I say, very well. As the mayor said recently, I think in your inaugural speech, that we've doubled the amount of facilities that we've built in the town in this last decade. We've also increased our parks, our open space. We have done a lot of things to continue to make this the most livable town in Canada. And I believe we are, we have done very well on our vision statement. But over the decade, this last decade, we still had to make some course corrections. So if I go back to 2008, the Great Recession, we were very early out of the gate. Mayor Burton, I think you will recall our early work that we did with the Budget Committee, and we put an expenditure control program. In fact, I went into the mayor's office to look at a cartoon, an editorial cartoon that he displays on the wall, where the Oakville Beaver congratulated us for having the foresight to get into the expenditure control to get ahead of the curve. As we continued through, and in 2011, 2012, we had built a number of facilities, we had purchased the Joshua Creek Arena, and when you look at our expenditures, we believed as staff that, again, there was a need to look at what we called resetting the financial tables. And so we had recommended to the council of the day that we should reduce the overall budget of about $3 million. In the end, we actually, 3.5 is what we achieved. But so that these changes would be non-disruptive or as non-disruptive, we worked with the Budget Committee of the day. We used reserves to bridge as we brought the savings into the budget. So from a public point of view, there was no, these were incremental changes as opposed to the big bang, which people understood with the 2008 recession. Things needed to change, people could tighten belts, and they understood it. And then in the last term of council from, I guess that's 2014 to 2018, you gave a mandate to staff, which I think we were successful at working to, which was stay within a blended rate of inflation with the town's budget, working with the region. In around 2016, things happened globally. Just south of the border, there was a new sheriff in town at the presidential level. It became a Make America Great. There were things about trade, there were things about tariffs. And as we got into 2017, the global economy was changing somewhat. And we recognized as we were working in 2017 on the 2018 budget, we could see keeping that blended rate of inflation as a mandate, but we were looking further down the line at changes that we believe were coming as staff. And we believe, like we did in 2011 and 2012, there's a need to actually look at some expenditure control again. So we, with the assistance of the council in 2018, set some monies aside so that my office, along with the executive management team, could begin to look at our service deliveries. And we developed a leadership plan. It's a leadership plan. It's something that I look at that helps bridge between council's strategic plan and our business plans that for each of the services, but how we take into account the current world that we live in, or the influences around us. So, as a part of that budget, we have initiated 4 areas of service review, and I'll be speaking to you as a council on February the 4th when we do the strategic plan, or begin the strategic planning process. But we are moving along in those areas, and if you look at some of the new disruptors that are coming along, obviously, if you start on the global, I mean, just this morning at 5 a.m. when my morning news started, again, China's now talking about its worst growth period in the last 30 years. Canada is obviously having difficulty with, in terms of some of the Chinese issues. Our American president is still down there with a federal bureaucracy that is stalled. We've got the economy sputtering in Canada. I know we have a new premier that is actually now bringing also new policies to bear. As we look at all that together, our plan initially was the savings that we were going to identify, and we are currently identifying, we would bring those into your 2019 budget to help control the expenditures. But given everything that's happened now and the fact that the growth plan could be changing, the whole way in which we govern at the municipal level, those municipal reviews could make changes that we can't fathom at this time. So our recommendation in my discussion with the mayor and staff's discussions with the budget chair, we believe it would be appropriate, as we did in 2011-12, to bring an additional reduction in to the budget, which would actually bring the town's budget within the rate of inflation, not just the blended rate. I'm confident, based on the work that we've done to date, that if we use our reserves like we did, it will be the least disruptive again to the citizens, to the council, to the organization. And I will be continuing to work on that program. We'll report to you in 2020 what those savings are. And as I say, we have other areas that we intend to continue on. Rather than trying to boil the ocean, we're going systematically where we see our best opportunities for change. So with Mr. Chairman, before my voice runs out, I'm pleased to, if there are questions, otherwise I will turn this over for your deliberation.
Thank you very much. Are there questions? Councillor Elger?
Thank you very much for the history lesson too, Ray. Why 2.1? Why not 3.1, 4.1, or 1.1? Like, do you know we can make the 2.1?
Well, I think the 2.1 at this point in time, knowing what we know, is a stretch, and that's a good thing. It needs to be a stretch. But as I said, we will be continuing with other reviews that I'm cautiously optimistic that will bring further results to you in this term of council.
So what do
So
we
this
have?
to me is a start.
What do we have in the bank right now under the rate stabilization before we cut it 2.1 million? Because hearing this morning, I haven't gone through my little tabs here.
Mr. Chair, the tax stabilization reserve is quite healthy. It's about $45 million. It is over the minimum amount or the recommended amount that GFOA would say that a municipality should have as a stabilization reserve. So we are in a good position.
So what is the minimum we're supposed to have?
I think it's about 17% of gross expenditures, and we're sitting at about 20% of gross expenditures.
Okay. So we take the 2 million out now to cut the budget to meet the inflation rate, the rate of inflation. We won't hear anything more in 2019 about where we should be putting the money back in and take it out of other accounts?
To you, Mr. Chair, when you will be hearing is the 2020 20 budget process, and we can give you also an interim report in between. But that 2020 budget process is what will be starting the latter part of this year. Really, this is the, it's at the changeover in council where we delay a budget process until for that current year. So we will be, dealing with the budget committee. We'll be meeting, our normal practice is to meet with the budget committee, I believe in June, following, to look at what the guidelines for the upcoming. We can give you a status report at that time. And then we'll be building that budget for the 2020, as well as any other opportunities that come along. So I see this as an ongoing process.
So we might be at 3.1. We could be more. We only need to have like 17%, 17 to 20%. And we're now at 20, and you're saying we can be as low, minimum can be 17% for that straight stabilization?
As recommended practice, yes. The 2.1 million brings us to inflation. It gives us some time to achieve these savings, and then moving forward, look at what the next steps are and what we might potentially find.
So overall, the intent will be to put the 2.1 back into the rate stabilization budget?
To remove it from the budget. So right now, if council approves the budget recommendation, we will build into the budget a transfer from the reserve into the operating budget. As we find the savings and reduce our budget, we will pull that transfer out, so we will stop transferring that money in.
Right, and we will rebuild it with the 2.1
We
million that
typically,
we're using?
Eventually, we do typically rebuild it through annual, if there's a surplus at the end of the year, the surplus goes into the tax stabilization reserve, so typically that is how we rebuild it.
Okay, so we have nothing in place that we will rebuild it. This is, I just want to make sure you're not,
If we found that we were going below recommended amount, then I would think in discussion with with Ray and the executive management team, we would be looking at a budgeted transfer into the reserve to ensure that we keep our reserve at an appropriate level. That has not been an issue. We've always ensured that we keep it at the correct level.
If I can, Mr. Chair, I mean, one of the philosophies that we've adopted here, and what we've adopted before, is not to use one-time money that you can't be fairly certain that you can come off. So it would be a fool's game to start drawing money out of a reserve, not knowing you can reduce that tax levy and its dependence. You don't want to get hooked on a drug where you're using reserves to pay for ongoing, continual tax items.
so you understand exactly why I'm questioning this, because that's exactly
Oh, absolutely.
what I'm afraid could happen. You got to be
But,
careful.
I do agree. And I give you as a commitment, and that's why we're taking a conservative approach. And I believe, Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor, members of council, we demonstrated in 2011, 2012, how we did it. And it worked well, and this is looking at repeating it in times which are a bit extraordinary, of what's going on in the global, the North American, and the Ontario and local economy.
Especially in Ontario right now.
Yeah, in part what we're trying to do there is also offer the taxpayers and the businesses in this community a break on their taxes. And in doing so, you take, while the town, there's a trickle-down effect to everything that's going on globally and south of the border. But for some residents in Oakville and businesses in Oakville who rely on trade and commerce and things, this break is a good break. It's a modest one, and it's as best we can do now with certainty, so that we don't, again, to your concern, that's exactly the one we're trying to address, is we don't get reliant on pulling money out of reserves to continue operation. That's, as I said, a fool's game.
Yeah, it's short term. Okay, so what percentage will we be at if we're taking out the 2.1? And the minimum that we were supposed to be at is 17%. So where does that put us? That's my question, Nancy.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't have that number right now. We can calculate that and get that to you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, just so I want a feeling of comfort that we're not all, that drops us down right at the margin, the lowest level of 17. So appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thanks.
Councillor O'Meara?
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Green. So, just so I can get my head around the pressures, the extraordinary times, these sort of end of days conversations we're viewing into the lens here. Is there any possible chance that service levels, on twofold this question, is there a chance that service levels will be impacted in some way, shape, or form over the next 2 years by the task you're going to be undertaking? And then on a second level to that, are there a chance that all these events outside of this municipality and our upper tier municipality are being thrust upon us that we can maintain the service levels that we have, operating within the parameters that we have from a budget, or should we be preparing our residents for the understanding that what is coming down to us at some point must impact the service levels if we are to maintain the path that we're on with the CPI or the direction that we're going? So those two specifically to us with the plan you're going on now in terms of service levels, and then secondary, the larger picture, 1, 2, 3 years out, if the elements that are moving above us and around us continue to pressure, should we be starting to let residents know at some point service levels are going to have to come into question if we continue to feel the pressures we're feeling?
I would respond this way. First of all, if there were what I would call significant changes to service levels, remember, it is council at the end of the day that sets service levels, and if we needed to go beyond, other what I will call back of house or operational ways that we conduct business, we had to go beyond that, look at service levels. I think that's a discussion that has to occur with council. There are some areas, some services that we deliver which would have a great impact on the public. There are others which public's not even going to perceive it to a large extent. It's state of good repair on how we do things. You always got to be careful about moving away from state of good repair and that, because, one of the things that always stuck in my head, and we've used as a mantra for years, it's the Fram oil commercial, right? Fram filter oil commercial. Pay me a little now or pay me a lot later. And so that has always been at the forefront, especially when you wear an iron ring and you've been in that business for a long time. So if there are significant service levels that would need to be changed, that's something we need to consult with council on. And the issue at that provincial level and what's happening, if I understand everything the way it is moving, it will be sooner than later. So, they talk about, for example, if we just look at the one elephant that's on the table, which is the review of the regional governments and the municipalities. Everything that I've heard is we'd be hearing things by, and before end of year. That is something we'll have to see what those changes are that are coming. Right now, we're looking as the town of Oakville, as your management team, and you as council, is we're maintaining the things that we do. We're trying to do them cost effectively. If the service review by the province turns to be a great disruptor, well, it'll be interesting to see how that all unfolds.
You're dancing around like an elected official there.
There you go. Well, as a CAO, you sort of get to that point.
I appreciate it.
It is. Look, my tact here was not to put fear that, we are still a fiscally healthy municipality, but you should never just rest on that. Our job has been to deliver the services, as the government says, at the provincial level, efficient and effectively. And if we've done nothing, we have shown that we can deliver. The purpose of my history was to demonstrate when we needed to make course corrections. We've done it on an ongoing basis, and we've done it as larger processes when the need arose. That's my message to this budget committee.
Thank you for that. And just one last bit of information, if we don't have it, if I could just get it. Do we, can you tell me what the dollar value on the 100%, on the $100,000 assessment rate is by making this change? Do we know?
Sure, I think it put it down from about $21 per 100,000 on the overall tax bill to about $15, if I remember correctly.
Actually, I believe it brings us to 1172 per
sorry,
100,000 from 1518 is the calculation I have. So
the changes are $4 per 100,000.
it is a $3.50-ish kind of number.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilor Sturman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Green. I do appreciate the history lesson because some of us probably didn't pay attention as much as others on council here over the last number of years. So I first of all want to thank you and staff for looking into this whole situation from a global perspective all the way down to our own backyard. I think our residents expect us to do a good job for the taxes that they pay. So I think this is a responsible way to go about it. I think I'm comforted the fact that this has been a story that's repeated in the past. So we have experience in how this can be done. And so I'm pleased to actually move this motion and move it supported. Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. So I have a motion on the floor then. Councilor Elgar?
Yeah, I just wondered, could you tell us how much it would cost if we had to run an emergency municipal election?
Where's Vicky? Is she here? Help me out there, Vicky or Gord. Unless that's a rhetorical question.
No, it's a
Okay.
question. I'll just
Vicky, I'm not sure what the cost of the election is. Gord, maybe you can help.
Generally, sort of as a bulk issue, it would come in between $1.5 and $2 million.
Sorry, how much?
Between $1.5 and $2 million.
Thank you.
That's right. I believe we always put aside every year a reserve for the election every 4 years. And I think it's about $500,000 that we have going into the reserve. If I recall.
Okay, any other questions? Comments? So I have a motion on the floor. Before I do that, I'm just going to double check. We don't normally have delegations at the deliberation meeting, but I'm going to just poll the audience. Are there any members of the audience here who want to provide information to us? So the motion on the floor is one, that the 2019 recommended operating budget as presented in the 2019 operating budget and the 2020 to 2021 forecast budget document be approved subject to the following adjustments. A, that $2.1 million be transferred from the tax stabilization reserve in recognition of the anticipated savings to be identified through the efficiency review work undertaken in 2018 and 2019, and that staff report back as part of the 2020 budget process on the savings achieved. Two, that the 2019 recommended capital budget as presented in the 2019 to 2028 capital forecast budget document be approved, subject to the following adjustments. A, that the budget for capital project 211-01901 Town Hall feasibility study of $250,000 be deferred. 3, that the 2019 net town of Oakville levy request of $197,637,900 be approved, resulting in a 1.99% increase in the town share of the residential property tax bill, representing an approximate 1.53% overall residential tax rate increase, and that the treasurer be authorized to confirm and adjust these amounts if required prior to council's approval of the budget on January 28, 2019. 4, that the 2019 rates and fees presented in the 2019 rates and fees schedule be approved as amended in the memos to council dated December 11th, 2018 and December 20th, 2018. Any other speakers? Then all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much, everyone. I appreciate your dedication and work throughout the process. I very much appreciate staff's work over the last few days, especially as we went through the final discussions. It's been a big year. We know there's lots of stuff coming at us.
And there's a lot of pressures for our municipalities to respond and deal with things as they come towards us, not only from a financial perspective, but the planning side and all the other matters that are coming before our senior staff to try and deal with. So thank you very much for once again stepping up and making sure that we can get through all of this.
This will be coming to council at the next council meeting. There are no other items before us. Thank you again, and we're adjourned.
20 or 22.